Welcome, everyone, to episode number 24 of 718 Sports. On this beautiful Thursday, February day, it's a little bit chilly outside, but it's always going to be warm up in here. We're joined by my sleepy co host, Isaiah Ruben Patel. He's just waking up here bright and early at 11:15 in the morning. Probably had a lift or something. Let's be honest, it's not anything personal or anything like that. But today's going to be a very exciting day. Today, we're going to be talking about the National League East. So last year, when we were doing predictions, we went American League and National League. This year, we're switching it up. We got to change it up a little bit. And that's pretty big, pretty exciting. Although I just got a notification, which is pretty funny. The Yankees just extended Aaron Boone for 2 more years. So that's interesting. But we'll talk about that later in a different episode. But yeah, we're going to get started. In my opinion, this is probably the most competitive division in the National League, and certainly the entire league, in my opinion. I mean, you have three true contenders on that team, on that division, in my opinion. You got the Mets, who everyone knows they made a big splash this season with taking my Juan Soto away from the Yankees. Then you got the Fighting Phils, who are always in there, and they were the 1 seed last year, and they just fell short. And then you got why am I blanking? The Braves. Got the Atlanta Braves. How could I forget them? Ronald Acuna Jr. is coming back. He's as healthy as ever. The Braves are still going to be legit contenders. The other two teams, maybe not contenders just yet. One of those teams, I think, definitely could be a stronger team this year. One of them is going to be absolute garbage. But we'll talk about who those teams are. I mean, I'm sure based on my tone and everything, you kind of tell which teams are who. But let's get started. Isaiah, I want to hear from you. Man, pick a team. Pick a team. Let's talk about it.
I want to talk about a team that I wrote off last year in our prediction. I think I had them like fourth last year, third or fourth. No chance of the playoffs. I talked a lot of smack about the New York Mets, and I got reminded of this a lot last year. If not from you, from other friends, people who watch our videos, I got reminded a lot about how low I put the Mets in my prediction and how much they surpassed what I thought. So we're gonna start with the Mets. I mean, let's start with who they lost. They lost Severino, Quintana, and Bader. I mean, that's not a huge loss. The Mets have only improved this offseason. Huge generational pickup with Juan Soto. Clay Holmes, they have a new starter in Clay Holmes, and then Jose Siri. So that's whatever. Jose Siri and Holmes. Clay Holmes becoming a starter is going to be interesting for the Mets. Their biggest struggle right now is their starting pitching. Cody Senga was hurt for a lot of the year last year. Sean Manaea really stepped up. Re-signing him was huge for them. So they have Cody Senga, they have Manaea. Clay Holmes is a starter. I believe he started previously to the coming of the Yankees. I'm not a huge fan of that, but interesting to see. They don't have a lot of top pitching prospects. Their number two prospect right now, Brandon Sproat, is a pitcher. He's in AAA. We probably will see him up this year, but their biggest problem is their pitching. Bullpen is they signed Minter. I mean, bullpens, whatever, but looking at their hitting, because that's what everyone's talking about, which is Juan Soto in this lineup. Biggest contract ever in sports. Re-signed Pete Alonso recently. So they're in a really good position. They have their 1, 2, 3 of Lindor, Soto, and Alonso. Besides that, the team's a little. I mean, it's going to fluctuate. That Mark Vanders had a really good year last year. For Alvarez is going to be behind the dish, but in terms of who's playing up the middle with could be Acuna, could be McNeil. They have a lot of open spots, so it's going to be interesting to see who they have playing the positions they do. They don't have enough trade capital. They have Jet Williams as their number one prospect. He's in AAA. We'll probably see him this year, most likely in the infield. But again, that also depends on Acuna. Drew Gilbert, also in AAA. We'll probably see him in the outfield with them losing Bader. But there's a lot of holes in this Mets team. But with the way they played last year, I'm not going to say anything bad. The way they played last year, they showed a lot of grit. They showed a lot of determination. I have the Mets in third place in this division. They're going to be exciting to
Wow.
watch.
This year?
I think this year, I think that there's still two teams better than that. I honestly, there's two teams. The
Interesting.
Mets proved me wrong in terms of looking at the playoffs. I think the regular season was better than I expected, but the way they played in the playoffs was a different story. The way they handled Milwaukee, the way that they fought against the Dodgers. They fought tooth
Yeah.
and nail. So them in the playoffs is a different story. They have a lot more experience in the playoffs now. And then again, re-signing Pete Alonso, getting Soto for a long time, like you have the ability to now sit and you were in the what's it called, the CS last year. Like you're so close to the promised land of where you want to be as the Mets, where you can now put those pieces together to make that team.
Yeah, that's it's a really interesting take right there. I think the Mets have only gotten better since last season. Their run last year was just something spectacular. Even as not a Mets fan myself, like looking in on that team and honing in on their magic was something truly inspiring. The question is, will the magic run out now that there's expectations? That is the tricky part. 2024, the Mets walked in with not too high expectations. They started out really slow, and they pretty much magically ran into the playoffs and pulled off some magic. The question is now, you know, there's talent all over the team. Juan Soto, Lindor is still there. But really, the Juan Soto is the big one, right? Like, they need Juan Soto to be the best player in the world. They have to have Juan Soto to be the best player in the world. And I'm not saying they can't win without him because last year they obviously won a lot without him. But if he goes down or Lindor goes down, it's going to be the cracks are starting to show. They're too superstar dependent, in my opinion. And I think bringing up to your rotation, the rotation of the Mets that you brought up, it's poor. I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's the worst rotation in Major League Baseball, but they lost Luis Severino last year, who was one of the best pitchers for them last season. And, they still got some great players, Sean Manaea, Kota Sengai, like still really strong, talented players. But, looking at some other, rotations in Major League Baseball, they're just not to the same level as like the Dodgers or the Yankees.
I want to hop in and just say, like, what I think you're saying is completely true. I think that for a contender, they have the worst rotation, but their rotation isn't bad for baseball.
Yes, correct. Absolutely. And I think the Mets could, go a couple routes, with this season. I don't think it's a specific like, oh yeah, the Mets are not going to be good, or yeah, the Mets are going to be really good this year. Because it is the Mets. You have to like put that card into play of like, it is just simply like the way they play baseball sometimes. They're supposed to be really good in 2023, and they just did not have a good year at all. That being said, though, I think they're going to be good. Like I think they're going to be legit. I think last year the Magic, really inspired a lot of these guys, and a lot of these players shot up out of nowhere. I mean, Mark Vientos like literally shot up out of nowhere as one of the best third basemen in the league, and now he's running it back next year. And they got Juan freaking Soto. I mean, like that's all you need to be a contender, in my opinion. So I think the Mets are going to finish first, and I think that it's going to be close. I'm not saying it's going to be I'm not saying it's a decisive Mets, victory here, but I think they're really, really good. I think they're really talented. I think they're legit. I think, they're going to come out here with the National League East.
To close off, I think you phrased that very well. I'm not going to agree with you, but I think you phrased that very well. What I see in the Mets is that when I think about like the David and Goliath, like Goliath falling, I think of the Nationals upsetting the Dodgers in that playoff run in their World Series run a few years ago.
Yeah.
Which is that the Mets can't the Dodgers are the Celtics right now in terms of like their comparisons. Like the Dodgers are so dominant where it's going to take a miracle for a team like the Mets to beat them. But there's always a chance. It's baseball. There's always a chance. My issue with the Mets is that I think like the rotation isn't good enough where they can compete with a team like the Dodgers. So we saw that last year. Like Blake Trinan came in like back-to-back games. The Mets are getting older. They have their guys long term, but they're getting older. They don't have a lot of trade capital. They really just gotta hope that their prospects. I think Acuna played great to end the year. Some of my Mets friends disagree, but I think Acuna is great. I love Acuna. I mean, his brother. Like it's in the genes. But they're gonna need someone like him to really step up and make a huge jump if they want to compete for the division. Sticking with Acuna, I want to move. Unless you have something else to say about that.
No, I mean, go for it.
Yeah. I'd love to move over to the Braves. I mean, the Braves are in a really weird spot right now. They're starting the year without Spencer Strider and Acuna. There is no necessary timeline for Strider. Strider, I believe, is coming back hopefully by April. Acuna, they're taking their time with as he's coming back from his second ACL injury. They did a really weird offseason, the Braves. They
Mhm.
lost their top pitcher with Max Fried going to the Yankees. They lost Charlie Morton, one of their veteran pitchers, I think he's in Baltimore now. And then they lost Travis Arno. They did pick up Jerickson Profar after his best season ever. And then that's their biggest pickup. They're in a weird spot. Last year was a very down year for them. A lot of injuries really, really hurt them. But this team is still very. If you put this team fully healthy on the field, which hopefully we will see in June, July, and August, September, this is a playoff team. Austin Riley's still very good. Matt Olson's still very good. Michael Harris is still very good. When Acuna is back, he's very good. Profar is very good. They have a very solid team. Their bullpen is still very solid. Their bullpen's always solid. Their rotation is lacking right now. Um, the rotation they're gonna need to pick up guys. Last year they were throwing guys in to fix the spot for Strider as they didn't really have a guy all year. They flip flop through the entire year. They do though have a few top prospects coming up. They have sorry, I'm looking right now. They have Hurston Waldrop as a right-handed pitcher top prospect. AJ Smith-Shawver as a right-handed pitcher prospect. So they have guys. They have guys. Um, their comparison will be the Mets from last year. They're not going to start the year off good. They're going to start the year slow. I don't think they're going to be. They'll probably be low in the division start the year, but once Strider and Acuna come back, I think this is a completely new team. I could see them making moves at the trade deadline. This is going to be a team to watch late in the year. I'm going to say July to September. This is the team to watch. April, May, June, don't even pay attention.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think last year they got hit with the injury bug a little bit, and I think this team necessarily didn't really get better, so to say, in the offseason, especially after losing their best pitcher to my Yankees. Um, but I mean, man, you still got Acuna coming back, and you know how much of a generational talent he is. And Olson's still playing out of his mind, and Austin Riley's still playing well, and Ozzy's still playing really well. Michael Harris is still playing pretty good baseball. Sean Murphy behind the plate with the catcher. So I mean, those guys right there are going to make an impact. And the thing I like about the Braves is they're very consistent. Generally, like if it's not the starters winning games, it's the backups winning games, right? It's the next man up. And, Braves are well managed, they're a strong team, and, you know, they're just lacking, I think, Acuna, I was going to say lacking a superstar, but that's just nonsense. I mean, they have Acuna.
They're just
But
lacking in general. I feel like they have nothing that sets them apart right now.
yeah,
They're not the
exactly.
same team as they've been over the last couple of years, but they're very similar.
They're the
They like
same old. Well, here's the thing, right? They're the same old Braves from last year. Nothing's really
hmm
gotten too much better. If in fact they've gotten worse, I would
hmm
argue.
hmm
Um, so why should I, expect this team to make a deep playoff run if they're just going to lose in the first round again, like they did last year? So I'm not saying they're a bad team, but you know, easily could, you know, be a World Series champion. No doubt in my mind. No doubt in my mind. It could, if it all clicks, they can win the World Series. Not a doubt in my mind. But that being said, last year got hit with the injury bug, and you're also Chris Sale is still there, and like he's a
Oh
good
my
pitcher.
God, how could I forget Chris Sale? Thank you for reminding me.
Like he's still a very strong pitcher. He pitched really well last year, but age is still an issue. And my experience as an American League East baseball team of the Yankees, he goes down a lot with injury. So Spencer Strider and Chris Sale potentially both being out. That's a big issue for the rotation, especially after losing Max. And Acuna still has some injury problems. He's still coming back from a significant injury. So I think you're right. We need to be patient with Atlanta, especially in that first month or two, just to like kind of feel it out. I don't know what exactly they're going to do that's going to like hook them better than what they were last year, other than trading for like an elite pitcher. But they're still a good team. They're still a strong team, and they should be at least talked about, in the National League East as, a division winner. They always win. There's like there's some of those teams that just always win. Like the Buffalo Bills, for example, this season. The Atlanta Braves are like the Buffalo Bills equivalent, right? I mean, the only difference is the Braves have won the World Series, but the the Braves are always going to be good. They're always going to find their way in the playoffs. The Bills got significantly worse and still made it to the AFC Championship game this year. So the Atlanta Braves are still kind of one of those teams. They can, maybe not be the best as they were on paper, but still make a deep playoff run and still make some loud noise.
Yeah, I can't believe that I forgot about my guy Chris Sale because that was one of my favorite takes from last year. You guys said people said that Chris Sale was going to be washed. I knew he was going to be good, and you want to Cy Young. I don't know how I forgot about that, but you make a great point. They still have Chris Sale. Chris Sale alone can't win a World Series with this team. I think my honest expectation for the Braves is they're going to be in the playoffs, not going to win a World Series, but they're going to knock a contender out. This is a team you don't want to play in the playoffs, but I do not think they're going to win the World Series. This is a team that you do not want the Dodgers to play first round. You don't want San Diego to play. Like, you do not want to play, especially if they can get home field advantage. You do not want to play in Atlanta in October. I will say that. Are they going to win the World Series? I'm going to say no. They need, as you said, they need to get more starting pitching. They need to get more pitching in general. But the hitting is there. Moving on, you please pick the team.
Yeah, talking about another team in the National League East. Let's just talk about a dumpster fire. Let's talk about the Miami Marlins. Get that boring one out of the way. I have nothing much to say about this team, other than they're not going to be very good, and that there are AAA teams that are better than the Miami Marlins, in my opinion. They still got Sandy. He's still a great pitcher for them. He's still going to be good, but he legitimately might be the only good player. Is that fair to say?
I think yes. Sandy Alcantara still being on the Marlins in 2025 confuses me for how bad they are. For example, with the way that Oakland played their rebuild, I think they've played it really smart. Looking as we now see, in terms of they traded Matt Chapman, Olson, they traded all their guys away, Simeon, and now they're in a good spot where they're going to be competing in the next 5-6 years for their division. Miami, they lost Luzardo, who's their second best starting pitcher. They signed Cal Quantrill, who I'm a huge fan of. Everyone's seen the clips of him on the Guardians,
Yeah.
But I mean, they lost Jake Burger. Like, their top prospects, like Noble Mayer, is in the same spot. Like, Max Meyer's gonna be in the rotation. Edward Cabrera has been. They're just not exciting. I can't. We could have said this last year of why is Sandy Alcantara not traded yet, and I can say that I could see him dealt by the deadline, which I hope he is. For his sake, I hope he is. But I can't. I don't think Miami will do it. Miami will get a huge return for Alcantara. A team like Atlanta would give up so much for a player like him. It's just, if you're Miami, you sort of have to trade Alcantara. Like, he is this superstar Cy Young candidate. He is coming off injury, but
still, might as well trade him and get some high level prospects. I mean, there's teams that would, easily trade away their top 5 prospect away for Sandy. And
he is a win now pitcher, yeah.
And the way the Marlins run their business just frustrates me because it's not like they've had bad players go through their system. It's not just been all bad. They've had Yelich, they've had Stan, Jazz been there. He was exciting. So it just doesn't make any sense to me why they're just waving the white flag all the time. It just doesn't make any sense. And the team wonders why no one goes to their games. It's because they put out a shitty product, on the field, and especially in comparison to the other 4 teams in their division. I mean, the Mets just signed Juan Soto. The Nationals are improving. We'll get to them. The Braves are still the Braves. The Phillies are, contenders as well, and they're just kind of there. And it's just kind of sad. Every time you go to Miami, it's a bad look for their franchise. Ohtani had that crazy game last season where he just hit 3 home runs and, just breaking records on their home field. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing right now to be a Marlins fan. And no one is going out of their way and rooting for their Marlins unless they're living in Miami or have some other weird connection to that team. It's not an exciting team. And there's no reason most people, any normal baseball fan would look at the Marlins and say, I want to be a fan of that team.
Yeah, I mean,
I kind of went off a little bit there.
No, please. I can't understand why Miami is a big market team. Miami is Miami, and they can't get good free agents. Going back to Sandy Alcantara, he is a win now pitcher on a team that won't win for maybe 10 years. You have, for his sake, you got to deal him. Jose Fernandez is a different story, but even guys like Romuto, Stanton, Yelich, like those were guys who were coming up with them. Even Jose Fernandez coming up with them, who were young stars. And then one thing happens, and then like Yelich wasn't very good on Miami. I will say that wasn't very good on Miami. But 3 years after he's dealt, he's an MVP. Like there's something there,
Yeah,
but
there's something wrong with the
Miami, yeah,
development of players in that situation. Yeah.
yeah, Miami is just very confusing in terms of what they're doing with their franchise. As you said, like their position moving forward is weird, but they're fifth place. I think we can both agree Miami will not win more than 50 games.
I don't know. I think Miami could be a contender. No, I'm just kidding. No, they're fifth place, no doubt in my mind. Um, I mean, they're an embarrassment or a joke. There's nothing more to say than that. It's not their fans. Their fans are very loyal and passionate. Those who do exist, but I'm more frustrated with the franchise, not necessarily the fans of the team. That being said, is there anything else you want to say about the Marlins, or are we good?
No, please end the Marlins talk
All
now.
right,
It's gonna break my heart.
gonna break the heart. Let's talk about the Phils. I think that's a fun team to talk about. Last year had a pretty devastating end to their longtime division rival New York Mets in the National League Division Series. That being said, they did win their division last year, and they won it by a pretty big margin. 95 games, 6 games above the Braves and the Mets, respectfully. Respectfully, the Phillies are still a pretty damn good team. You know, their skin. They last year they had a bad end of the season. They just ran into a red hot Mets team that had a lot of momentum, a lot of passion, a lot of drive on their side. You know, and let's talk about that series just for a little bit too. I mean, that was probably one of the most entertaining series I've ever seen because on paper the Phillies have a much better team than the Mets, in my opinion. But last year, the Phillies had all the pressure in the world. They were the division winners. You know, the Mets, they weren't supposed to be there. So if the Mets lost to the Phillies in the first round, got swept, no one would be upset. Whereas if the Phillies lost in the first round, everyone would be upset. And that's exactly what happened. So the Phillies are going in, going into the season after a pretty rough year. They still got Trey. No, they don't have Trey Turner. Do they have
Yes, they
Trey
do.
Turner? They do have
Yeah,
Trey Turner.
he's
I
still
don't know
there.
why
They
I
got him
thought
long
about that.
term.
I don't know why I thought about that. I don't know why I thought on the Dodgers for a second. That's so random. They still got their guys, right? They still got Bryce. They still got Alec Bohm. They still got Shorebaum. They still got Castellanos. They still got Romano. They still got Taijuan Walker. They got Aaron Nola still there. They still got a great rotation. Stott is still there, shortstop. Marsh is still there. JT's still there. I mean, like 1 through 9, this team is a very strong team. And don't be afraid. Don't be shocked if this Philadelphia team not comes out of nowhere because we know they're going to be good, but comes out and wins 100+ games this season and just dominates the National League and just walks their way to a World Series. There's no doubt in my mind that could happen. Will it happen? No. In my opinion, it will not. I think they're going to finish second, but I think that they're still a very, very strong team. I mean, just last year, their playoff series was just embarrassing to watch. And I felt kind of bad. Like, they just totally nationally embarrassed themselves on, national television, and
Yeah.
losing to the Mets of all teams too. Not just like, oh, some random whatever. Like, no, lost to their division rival who's been kicking ass the second half of the season. So
Yeah.
momentum is a big play in sports, man. I mean, it really is. And, you know, there's a lot of question marks around this team. Like, this is a win now season. If they don't win this year or they don't at least, show improvement this season, it's going to be some tough conversations in that front office. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. I mean, to piggyback off that, looking at who they lost this last season, lost Jeff Hoffman, lost Carlos Estevez, Austin Hayes. None of those were big compared to getting Jesus Luzardo to back up that starting pitching. Great pickup. Max Kepler in the outfield is going to be a huge pickup, and then Jordan Romano. Bryce Harper at first base wasn't something I expected last year, but it's something that I think is super important to this Phillies being good. Lost Rhys Hoskins last year, but Harper at first base is now an everyday thing. I believe he's going to play the outfield again this year, but he's an everyday guy at first base. Like his bat will be in the lineup. His body is not on the line as it was in the outfield. That's a huge, huge thing for them.
And then they can also put some other guys in the outfield there. It's not like their best player is suddenly injury risk because he's throwing his body left and right and left center field. You know what I'm saying? Like he's not throwing
Yeah.
himself around
And
it. First baseman. I mean, first base is a hard position. I'm not saying it's not an easy position. There's no easy position in baseball. You know that. But
yeah.
There are some that are easier than others and less physically demanding on your body. In first base, the chance of injury just decreases significantly. Whereas the
Yeah.
outfield, you know, Bryce Harper, all he has to do is just feel the ball, catch the ball. That's all he really has to
Yeah.
do.
Talking about the outfield too, like they're Schwarber and Realmuto are going to be free agents this offseason. I'm looking at their top prospects. Andrew Painter's been in the minors for a long time. He's almost 22, but he's in the minors for a couple of years. Still with some injuries, but him and Adam Miller are their two top guys. Like those are two guys who they haven't. I don't think either of them have debuted yet. So I'm looking at a different team in the AL and the White Sox. They still have Luis Roberts. Luis Roberts was talked about a lot last year going to the Phillies, and this is the Phillies' time. Like if you want to make sure Bryce Harper stays at first, like work this team around. I would not be shocked if Schwarber, Realmuto, Painter, any of those guys gets traded, Miller even gets traded to the White Sox for a star, or even traded somewhere else for a star. The Phillies are so close. They've been in a World Series, but they're so close to the top. They're, in my opinion, the second best team in the NL besides the Dodgers. They have Trey Turner, so there, as you said. I don't think Alec Bohm will end the year as a Philly. He's probably going to get dealt, but Ramuto's still there. Harper's still really good. This team is really good. Their pitching is getting even better. Nola's been great. Zach Wheeler's had a Cy Young year the last couple of years. Luzardo's another. Gregory Soto's had a really good year in the bullpen. Like they're even Michael Lorenzo, who was traded from was traded 2 years ago. He had a really solid year with them. I mean, the Phillies in a really good spot. They won the division last year. Now they have a chip on their shoulder too with the way they play in the playoffs. I think this Philly team is probably my second highest pick for who wins the World Series. So they're going to come with a chip on their shoulder, and if by the trade deadline they're not looking good, they will sell. They will sell Schwarber. They will sell Realmuto. They will, I could even see them selling Brandon Marsh. Like they will get rid of guys to make sure that next year's team is good. But the Phillies are my first place team. The Phillies are really good. Bryce Harper had an excellent year last year when he was healthy. And when this team is healthy, they are a scary team. Even Castellanos, like they're a scary team when they're healthy. And there's no team in the division I think is better than that.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I think the Phillies are second place team, as I kind of said. And it's tough because I really think that three out of these five teams could walk away with the division. So it just kind of depends. And so like a lot of these divisions we're looking at, it's like, oh yeah, the Yankees and the Orioles will probably win the division, most likely the Yankees. But now it's, well, we'll see what happens. We just have to let the season play out. But I want to talk about one last team. I think this is kind of the wild card team, the team that could make some interesting moves. Let's talk about the Washington Nationals, who have won a World Series recently. So they know how to win a World Series. Their ownership, their front office, everyone in that organization, they know how to do it because they've done it. Which still to this day, I think is the craziest World Series I've ever seen. Don't you agree with me? Like, it just came out of nowhere. In 2019, the
Yeah.
Nats won it
That
all.
was I honestly I think the Chicago one was more exciting to me. But
Yeah, I mean,
I think that's
anyway,
what you're saying. Yeah. In terms of looking at the Nationals, they're in a really good spot. They are probably besides Kansas City in the second best like farm system to like MLB spot in all of baseball. James Wood did really, really well last year. CJ Abrams, when he wasn't gambling, was really, really good. But the pitching staff is up in the air. Jake Irvin had a solid year, but they got rid of Patrick Corbin. Um,
thank God. About time. Sorry.
yeah,
No
one of
disrespect
the
to
no,
Patrick
no,
Corbin as a
please,
person, but
yeah.
he
So
was a
Patrick Corbin
disaster
was
at the
great on the
side.
Diamondbacks, but something happened the last 2 seasons. He's been one of the worst pitchers in baseball. But their pitching needs improvement. I'll say that their pitching really needs improvement. Their top prospects don't have a lot of pitchers, so a lot of hitters. Their third top prospect is a pitcher, but their number one prospect is Dylan Cruz, and you're going to pair him up with James Wood and CJ Abrams, you're in a really good spot.
Yeah.
So the Nationals are exciting. They're going to be the fourth place team for me, but we're going to see Dylan Cruz in the opening day roster. We're going to see a really exciting outfit of him and James Wood. CJ Abrams could also even be in center field. Like this team's going to be exciting. They signed Josh Bell and Nathaniel Lowe. They did sign Soroka too, but Josh Bell and Lowe are the big ones. Two big first base DH bats. They're getting their bats there. The bats are almost there to really compete with the teams up in the division, but the pitching is still far behind. They're going to be they will be a very exciting team though. No matter how bad the baseball is, they will have guys who will bring you to the ballpark.
I have a question though for you. Could they win a World Series this year? Do you think they could do it this year?
No, no, there's no chance.
Hmm.
You can't like especially looking
No
at teams
chance. No
now with
chance
like
at
the
all.
Yankees. I hate the Yankees. Yankees and Dodgers, even Red Sox are not even a bad team. Like there's like so many teams that have better like even look as a pitcher myself. Like look, pitching is so important in baseball. Looking at your number one starter to the last to your closer in the bullpen, like you need a lot of guys. Like the Dodgers, I was when I was watching the Dodgers, when they won 20, what was it 2021, 2020? I don't even remember. But whenever they won, like a guy like Blake Trinan does the same thing every year, and he's so dominant. His stuff is electric. He's some of the best I've ever seen as a pitcher. But the the Nationals don't have a guy like that. They don't have like a standout. Even the Tigers. The Tigers got lucky with not lucky, but Reese Olson, Schoolboy Flaherty, like their bullpen is a little lacking, but it makes up for their starting pitching. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The
Yep.
Yankees have a good starting pitching and good bullpen. Dodgers, good starting pitching, good bullpen. Those are contenders. Contenders have good starting pitching, good bullpens. Even the national team that won had good starting pitching and a good bullpen. Like Steven Strasburg won the MVP, World Series MVP for a reason, and they had Max Scherzer. Like that team was really good when you look at it. The Nationals don't have the pitching. They really don't. The bats are getting. They're not close to contending, but the bats are good for Cruz could be an all-star. Wood could be an all-star. Abrams should be an all-star. Like they'll have guys. Josh Bell could really pick up where he left off with the Nationals. Like
Mhm.
they'll have exciting bats, but they need to develop and trade for more arms. Their issue is they don't have, in my opinion, enough trade capital to trade for arms and the money and the destination to bring guys in. So they're really gonna have to hope that farm system just really takes a step up and they get guys who are really just chucking.
Yeah. And looking at the World Series odds right now, Nationals they have the fourth worst World Series odds. The Marlins, the Rockies, and the White Sox are only worse, which, maybe that, changes my mind a little bit, but I think that they could win a World Series this year. I think, you know, if all goes perfectly with the bats, and I'm talking like perfectly, I'm talking like they all turn into, strong players like in that the Nationals were in 2019. Juan Soto. If they find the next Juan Soto in there, I mean, they're going to be no joke. That being said, it's far off, but if someone told me the Nationals snuck into the wild card and made a deep run and won the World Series again, never happened. You never know. You never know. Playoff
Their
baseball is interesting,
ceiling,
Isaiah.
their ceiling is a wild card team. That's like the
That's their
ceiling if
ceiling.
everything
That's
goes
their
well.
ceiling.
But
Yeah,
there's
but
no chance that even looking at that Dodgers team they beat, even that Milwaukee team, like I'm not gonna say they got lucky because it's baseball and that stuff. There's no luck in baseball. Stuff just happens.
yeah,
But the Dodgers have improved so much. The Dodgers team from then has improved so much, and then Astros team from them has decreased so much where the gap is huge. Like I can go band for band with Dodgers Nationals, and the Dodgers will have so much better players. Like that's the way the world works. Like we could be seeing a Yankees Dodgers dynasty for the next like 10 years. I don't think we will because there's teams that are like gonna pull a national thing. They're gonna come out and they're gonna go. The Phillies did that a couple years ago. Like there are teams that will compete for a championship. The Nationals are not one right now.
yeah.
The Nationals in Oakland are in the same type of very good position where they're moving up. Like they're moving up in the world. They're in two really hard divisions, but they're slowly just fighting their way back up.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I'm not really sure. With the Nationals, they could do the same thing they did last year, win 70 games, kind of miss the playoffs, or they could sneak into a wild card team. I'm not 100% sure. I think they'll be in that 80-win range, though, most likely. Um, but let's kind of just like we have a little bit of time left. Let's jump right into the predictions. We already kind of stated them throughout this podcast. If you've been listening, sorry for doing this again, but got to get it for the shorts, guys. I mean, come on. Number 5, Marlins. Marlins are here at the bottom. Then you got the Nationals. Then you got the Braves. Then you got the. Hold on. Let me start. Let me start this
I'll,
over
I'll
again.
hop in. I'll hop in.
Now,
I'll let you think.
he maybe.
Yeah, I'll hop
Ready? All
in.
right, ready?
Mine's
Marlins,
very simple. Oh,
Nationals,
you're gonna go.
Braves, Phillies, Mets.
Please
Mets are going to
repeat
be at
that.
the
Please
top.
repeat that. Please repeat that
Mets,
one more time for people.
Marlins, Nationals, Braves, Phillies, Mets. 5 through 1. I think the I think the Phillies are still really good, and I think the Braves still have some issues they got to work out. I'm not saying I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be close. Don't people are going to be coming on saying, "Hey, like, oh, that's ridiculous." First and third are going to be within like 2 or 3 games of each other. Don't even think about that. I think they're going to be like really close. I think it's going to come down to that last week of baseball. Who do I trust more in those situations? Trust Bryce Harper and Juan Soto over Acuna a little bit more.
Okay. I'm gonna do something a little similar but a little different. At 5, I have the Marlins, obviously. 4, I got the Nationals. 3, I have the Mets. At 2, I have the Braves, and at 1, I have the Phillies. I'm gonna say that the Braves and the Mets will be both in the wild card. I don't think the Mets or the Braves will have enough to make it competitive with the Phillies. I think the Phillies will win the division by like 5, 6 games, but that wild card in 2 and 3 are going to be a little more highly contested.
Yeah.
The bottom of the division's bad, but I gave a lot of crap to the Mets last year. The Mets and the Braves could easily win the division. I don't think they will. I think the Phillies will make a play at the trade deadline, and they're going to get some guys who are going to make the team even better. But they could both make a play for the division.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have about a minute left. So just breaking news just came into me, but Aaron Boone of the Yankees just re-signed a 2-year contract extension. I think it's the right move. I think it makes the most sense. They just had their best season, and if you know it's going to be successful, you know it's going to work. You know the guys in the dugout love him. Why not? Why change it? You know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a huge Aaron Boone fan, but what he's doing in New York, it's working. Like that team is working. So
yeah, we'll see what happens. But thank you guys for joining episode number 24. Kobe, we love you, Kobe. We'll talk about basketball soon one of these days, but the game has just got to get more exciting. But next week we'll talk about the American League Central, and stay tuned. So thank you guys for tuning in. Peace.